Good morning, everyone, and good evening for some of us. For those who don't know me, my name is Carlos Matias Figueroa. I'm the LAC MRB and NDC Enhancement Officer for the region, and today I'm going to talk to you about distributed ledger technology. So please stop me at any point, although we have a section for Q&A, but if you have any doubts, please let me know. I'm going to turn off my camera just to be a bit more focused. And also I want to take the opportunity to thank Maria Paula because she has been the one commentator on this document. The PPT will be focusing on a knowledge product that we are finalizing, focus on DLT technology, and that's why the presentation. So I just want to thank Maria Paula. Thank you. When we hear the terms like blockchain or distributed ledger technology, our minds often jump to cryptocurrencies and volatile markets and a lot of technical hype. But today, that's not the case. I want to go through those kind of noisy terms, and we are going to talk about we are not going to talk about speculative assets. We are here to talk about the underlying technology and how it can help us solve some of the most persisting challenges we face in green growth and climate action. So this presentation is about reframing distributed ledger technology as a tool for building something we need, a verifiable digital chain of trust and how that can accelerate our mission. So this is the overall the distribution of the presentation. I'm going to discuss what are the challenges that this technology can help us with, what are the opportunities and the objective of the knowledge product itself. And then we're going to go with for an overview of what's DLT, what kind of DLT technologies are out there, how DLT can, let's say, solve some of the work lines that we are pushing as an organization. What are the challenges that we see and how can GGI move forward? When you see the knowledge paper, hopefully by the end of the year, you will see that there's a section that specifically links our current programmatic solutions that will change accordingly to the new strategy for the organization. But for the time being, we do have that. So it's a very clear way to see how each of these solutions provided by DLTs can help us in several areas. So, as we all know, our work is fundamentally about driving systemic change, but we consistently run into the same systemic barriers. We face a lack of trust and transparency, which slows down collaboration. Donors are hesitant to disburse climate finance without a 100% verifiable impact. We have the same issue with investors that need, let's say, or be sure that a project credentials are trustworthy. We battle also with inefficiency processes, thinking about the paper-based and multi-year processes of monitoring, reporting, and verifying in terms of MRB, but also in terms of project management. Think of the layers of intermediaries that also pose high transaction costs for climate finance. So it's something that we constantly face. Also, we have to navigate complex governance in multi-stakeholder projects and at multiple levels. So we have to constantly try to align national governments, private sector partners, and local communities with a single source of truth. So it's difficult to convey the same message to different audiences. Now, in the opportunity side for thinking on DLTs, DLTs is a technology that seems almost purpose-built for these challenges. We can build trust with this chain of trust by creating a shared, unchangeable, and completely transparent ledger or database. Please think of the word ledger as a, let's say, notebook or digital notebook where we put information, regardless of the kind of information. It can drive efficiency by automating slow processes with something that's called smart contracts that we will also discuss. And it can enhance governance by creating secure and decentralized systems where all stakeholders, from a donor sitting in Berlin, for an example, to a project management in rural Colombia, and we are looking at the same, as I was telling you, at the same data, that it can be trustworthy. This is the overview of the document. It has, of course, what's DLT, how are DLT and green growth and climate action linked, the nexus between, as I was telling you, between DLT and GGGI. We already have real examples. This is a very important point. We are falling behind in these subjects. So we need to as we are currently undergoing a strong push for artificial intelligence, we cannot only be focusing on artificial intelligence. We have to go beyond that and consider the three technologies that are linked: artificial intelligence, DLTs, and the Internet of Things, because we are falling behind. There are numerous organizations that are both partners and competitors that are already addressing these issues. And finally, we have a let's say, roadmap of how GGGI can adopt and mainstream DLT in several programmatic solutions. Now, so what's DLT? So forgetting the jargon for a moment, the easiest way to think about it is a shared digital notebook. So it's just, let's say it's just that. So right now, almost all of our systems are centralized. A bank, for example, government registry, or our own project databases. So one entity controls that notebook. So this is simple. But it's also a single point of failure and a bottleneck. So that's where we got to the distributed ledger side. A distributed ledger is the opposite. It's a shared notebook where every participant is in the network has an identical copy and a synchronized copy. It has two, let's say, magical properties. It's permanent in the way that you can only add new entries and you cannot change anything or delete anything from the previous information exchanges. It's synchronized, and when a new entry is validated by the network, and it's added to everyone's notebook. So there's no way of, let's say, double counting or having different information or not having access to the same information. So this means that we can trust the system without having to personally trust every single participant in it. Of course, this technology has evolved over time. Everything started with the financial crisis of 2008, with the crash of the real estate market in the US. So this came out of a black paper under the pseudonym of Satoshi Nakamoto, and basically it was the let's say the architecture for Bitcoin and for all blockchains, or let's say cryptocurrencies, in a way to avoid having central banks deciding over the money of people. It's also rumored that the CEO of Apple, Steve Jobs, is the actual author of this paper, but that's kind of part of the mysticism of this technology. After the first, let's say, wave with blockchain and Bitcoin, we got smart contracts in a new generation of blockchain. I will go over the different technology because DLT is not blockchain. It's an ecosystem of different technologies. These smart contracts are built in a different kind of cryptocurrency, let's say, that's called Ethereum that allows us to automate processes and to allow us to have, let's say, instant transactions once certain criteria are met. So there's no human interaction, it's just an automated system. And then we will discuss it later, but to, let's say, validate each of the transactions within the DLTs, we have to go through, let's say, some validation procedures. And in the past, we used to, well, the initial, let's say, Bitcoin, for example, requires something that's called proof of work. So that's where a computer is connected to the internet trying to solve an equation to then add that information to the blockchain. In this case, the new way of doing it is to actually put, let's say, resources on the table and say, I'm guaranteeing that the cryptographic criteria is met because I'm putting this amount of money in the table. So we are moving to what are the benefits of this technology, why we are doing what we are proposing to do, and what all are also the challenges that this technology has, because as you are, I imagine, familiar, this is a very energy prone application. But coming back to the benefits, this shared notebook gives us 5 powerful benefits. One is transparency. As I was telling you, all participants see the same ledger. A donor can see exactly where their funds are going. For example, a carbon credit buyer can see a credit entire history from its creation to its retirement. The ledger has also immutability. This is a key word for DLTs. Once the data is recorded, like the issuance of, I will be using a lot of carbon credit reference, just for you to know. But so, for example, once like the issuance of a carbon credit, it's virtually impossible to alter or falsify it. So this is a key. This is the key to creating a permanent and an auditable trail of and solving problems like double counting. It's decentralized. No single entity owns the database. This removes bottlenecks and single points of failure. So, for example, there's no way a hacker can steal carbon credits or carbon bonds from the issuance party or for someone holding the ledger. So this is critical for multi-country collaboration, like under Article 6 of the Paris Agreement, where no single country should own the central ledger. Efficiency, as I was telling you, via smart contracts, there is where it gets more interesting. A smart contract, as I was telling you, is just an if and then agreement written in the code that lives within the DLT. For us, this means if, for example, an Internet of Things sensor on a solar panel reports that that panel has produced certain amount of power, then the DLT via the smart contract will automatically release the first tranche of climate finance for the project developer. So it's automatization based on verifiable data. And finally, it's secure because the ledger is distributed and cryptographically linked. It's very difficult to solve this. Only quantum computers pose a threat to solving the cryptographic code embedded in DLTs. So we are still far away for having those issues. So to tamper with the record, a hacker would have to attack thousands of computers at the same time. So it would be difficult to do. Going to the challenges. As I was telling you, we have to, of course, not only see the good things, but also the bad ones. So DLT is not a magic wand, and it comes with very real challenges that need to be addressed. The first one is energy consumption. This is virtually the elephant in the room because you all have heard that Bitcoin uses more energy than some countries. So as I was telling you, this is because there's a lot of processing capacities required to solve the cryptographic in each of the chains. So for example, for GGI, this is a non-starter, for example, so we will need to shift or propose solutions that are based on different kinds of protocols, more energy efficiency protocols, as I was telling you, as proof of stake. There's also challenges in terms of regulations and governance. The technology is moving way more faster than the policy, so that's creating legal gaps. Not all countries have, very few countries actually have regulation about distributed ledger technologies. It's something that we should and be supporting. The technical complexity that, for example, this knowledge product is trying to solve. This is not a plug and play solution. It has a lot of requirements in terms of IT on understanding how databases are linked, what's the link between our programmatic solutions and the technology. So it's difficult to understand it, then convey the measures, and then actually implement a project. And of course, and one of the let's say criticisms that I received when we first were discussing this is data quality. Of course, this system has the same point of failure as any other information system. If we put trash in, trash will be coming out. So we have to be able to sort out these kind of things. So for example, using sensors and the Internet of Things, it would be a way to solve the issue and have very transparent data. Sorry. So we are moving now to the ecosystem that I was telling you. There are at least, well, these are the top 5, let's say, types of DLTs. Blockchain is the most famous because of the cryptocurrencies, but it's not the only one that exists. We have blockchain, hashgraph, DAG, holochain, and Tempo-Radix. So each of them has different ways of approaching the same issue, and each one has different applications. So we will need to be using the right tool for the right job. So for example, blockchain, it's the most, let's say, easy to understand. It's a linear chain of blocks. Each block is let's say, a group of transactions or of a group of information put into a block. And each time that you add new information, you are generating a new block. And they are organized or chain chronologically, and they are linked also by the cryptographic link. So for example, for a very specific subject that we address, is the perfect example is a national carbon registry or tracking the history of a green bond from issuance to maturity. So that will allow us to understand how it was, let's say, developed, where the bond or the carbon credit is being issued, or what are the conditions for it to exist, and then who is selling them to who, and if we are canceling that carbon credits, for example. For Tangle or DAG, this is a blockless chain. So instead of having a single chain, it's a web of transactions. So you will be seeing, if I were to put a diagram, you will see only connecting dots. So to make a new transaction, your device must first quickly verify 2 other transactions. So you will be seeing these triangular structures, and these are designed for speed and high volume. It will be ideal for managing a smart grid with thousands of homes trading solar power, or for millions of Internet of Things sensors in a forest reporting data in real time. So it can handle a high frequency of small data transactions very well, which is why we also mention it for carbon markets. Hashgraph, it's another alternative for high speed. It uses a consensus method that it's called gossip about gossip. So you have to verify information from someone else to verify that that transaction is actually happening. And it's also not because it's highly secure, because you need to hear the information from two other points. The example for this one would be, for example, if this could be used to power a high-frequency emission trading system where millions of allowances are traded or being used for verifying sustainable supply chain data. So, for example, this could be used to trade or to know the history of a particular good. We will see an example from Peru that it's already using it for forest products. Holochain is this one is a radical departure. So it's a centric. Instead of everyone sharing the same ledger, each participant or agent has its small local ledger. So this only share relevant data with each other, and there is no need to interact. So this will help for example, this is a highly scalable and efficient for decentralized community projects. So think of a local peer-to-peer solar trading market in a village or on a community-based circular economy platform for tracking and trading waste materials, which doesn't need a global consensus, just to prove that the local interaction is happening. Sorry. So thinking about very practical applications for us, the first one is one of the most promising. So for carbon markets, the biggest challenge are, especially under Article 6, is double counting. How do we ensure that a ton of carbon is reduced in one country and sold to another one, and it's not being claimed first by the issuing country? So the solution from DLT is that we have a single and shared registry built specifically for Article 6. And for example, the steps would be when the project is verified, it means a token, that it's a virtual representation of a carbon credit with a unique digital signature. So we know that so for example, we will have each carbon ton would be minted in a token, and then when that credit is sold, the token moves from the seller account to the buyer account, and the transaction is public, and everyone understands what's happening. And finally, when the buyer wants to use that credit to meet with its target, it's retired, and the token is destroyed digitally. So it's removed from circulation forever. So then the entire life cycle, it's visible to all parties. Double counting becomes computationally impossible. And we can also use smart contracts and the Internet of Things to automate the MRV itself, and that would drastically lower our cost and speeding up the carbon credit issuance process. So it would solve both double counting and how we can reduce the cost of the actual, let's say, validation process to issue a carbon credit. For climate finance, right now there's a, let's say, transparency gap. Money flows from a donor through multiple intermediary banks to a government to a project. So it's slow, it's costly, and at each step the visibility is lost. So it's difficult to track funds from end to end. And the DLT solution is one, traceable funding. We can create a transparent and end-to-end pipeline. The donor can see their funds move as digital tokens from their account to GGI, to the country partner, and to the vendor. So for example, Bondes, the Development Bank of Brazil, it's already experimenting with tokens, and it's a real world example of this. The second step would be results-based payment. This is where it gets interesting. We log those funds into a smart contract. The money is then released when the verifiable results are delivered to the DLT. So the sensor, let's say, for example, if we link the information to satellite images, then if the satellite validates or provides the sufficient information for the ledger technology to validate that that particular place is not being deforested, then the climate finance can be disbursed to the appropriate to the specific account, even to the farmer taking care of that reforestation or afforestation. And also, it can be used for sustainable supply chains. How can we prove that a product is green? So how do we know that the coffee that we are drinking is actually shade grown? How can a government stop illegal lodge timber from being mixed with legal timber and exported? That it's an actual problem that many of our countries are facing. So it's very difficult to verify those claims. The solution is to create, for example, a digital passport for a physical product at every single step of the supply chain, from the farm to the processor to the exporter to the shipping container to the retailer. A new registry is added to the DLT, and this creates an unchangeable and verifiable history that can be traced and can be proven to the final consumer. And this is not just theory, this is based on actual cases. So as I was telling you, we have 3 examples here. One is the good tracking protocol that is working in Peru. This is exactly the digital passport that we just mentioned. And this was actually put in place to fight illegal logging in the Amazons. They are using DLT-based systems to do it. When a tree is legally harvested, it's given a digital ID. The ID is scanned and tracked at every single point, and a buyer can scan the QR code on the timber yes, but if we attach a QR code to, let's say, a board, the consumer can see its entire journey from being legally grown to being legally sold. As I was telling you, Bondes token from Brazil. Bondes, for those who are not aware with that, it's the National Development Bank from Brazil, and they are using DLT-based tool called TrueBudget to provide real-time trusted information for disbursements for an Amazon fund, and this is increasing accountability for donors. And the EXO blockchain for impact. This is a protocol used in Thailand to automate MRV for a bundle of solar projects. The data is fed into the DLT, which then is automatically verified, which automatically verifies the emission reduction and the issuance of carbon credits. And this shows the MRV to market linkage happening in real time. And we are almost over. So how can we move forward? The knowledge product also proposes a sensible and phased approach. Thinking, let's say, ambitiously, but also strategic and responsibly, we are kind of going as in an approach that starts scrolling, then we walk, and then we run. So the first phase is building knowledge and capacity. This is the starting point. With this knowledge product, we finalize and disseminate this framework. We demystify the technology internally, and we work with other member countries to identify 2 or 3 high impact and feasible pilot cases. We are looking to have a very strong ownership by countries, but also looking to have alliances with key players in the, let's say, DLT arena. In the phase 2, when we start to work, we co-design pilots. So we don't need to become a tech company. We just partner with one that that has the expertise in DLTs, and we provide the expertise in green world and climate change. And we design these pilots with clear KPIs to measure success against the traditional way of doing things. In going a bit further in a phase 3, where we start to transition from walking to running, we implement pilots and gather real world data, what worked, what didn't work, what were the, let's say, unintended consequences of the lessons learned, and we then prepare to reach a bit further and start generated innovation. And once we are very capable, or we feel confident on doing it, we start running, and we scale up the pilots and mainstream them. So based on what we have developed, we can develop a suite of knowledge products, toolkits, best practices, and policy guidelines, and we integrate this solution into our core programmatic offering to our member countries. So it's, let's say, do it as smooth as possible, but also as fast as we can, given that, as I was telling you, we are falling behind on these issues. So to conclude, I just want to bring it back to our main theme. This is not about the technology for the sake of technology. This is about building a new foundation of trust, and also thinking that DLT and the tokenization of real world assets can also help us bridge the gap in terms of climate and sustainable finance. Real world assets, it's not mentioned in the document, and it's not mentioned throughout the presentation, but real world assets are a way of harnessing finance for sustainable projects that are not based in traditional investors. So the end result for DLT, for GGI, should be real world assets tokens. So for decades, our work in climate action and green growth has been held back by the lack of trust, transparency, and sometimes accountability. DLT offers us let's say, for the first time, a practical and digital tool to solve these problems, and we will build this chain of trust based on the characteristics of this technology that, as I was mentioning, is transparent, accountable, efficient, and inclusive. So it is a key enabler for accelerating our transition to a low carbon, resilient, and sustainable future, and we are trying to move forward. So that's it from my side. I imagine you have a lot of questions. I hope I can answer them. I'm not an expert on DLT. I'm not a programmer. I'm an economist with a lot of imagination, and that's it. Thank you. Thank you for listening. So I don't know if you have any questions. I think you don't. Also, if yes, Andres.
Hello, this is Andres. Thank you for the presentation. That's very interesting. I have like a couple of questions. Here in Vanuatu, we try to do some carbon credits, and one of the barriers that we face is the market is not big enough, or the accounting for this, how to make sure that we are correctly accounting for the things or the carbons that we are avoiding. So maybe this is something that we could include, but my concern is first, which technology might be the least energy or the most energy efficient? That would be one. And two, just giving an example. Let's say I'm doing more efficient cook stove, how do we how will be accounting for these let's say not sophisticated assets and include these more or way too sophisticated technology? I don't know how to blend these two. So can you provide us some guidance on this? Thank you.
Yes. So most of them are very energy demanding technologies, but for example, Tempo or Radix is something that we can look at. It doesn't require high computational power. It can be powered by very simple technology such as smartphones. So, and smartphone can be your ledger and do all the transactions and the calculations. So we could, for example, propose using Tempo, that it's based more in time rather than anything else. And we can also propose to use a proof of stake protocol to validate the information. So that would be the first answer. And the second one, thinking on cook stuff, we can also think of very simple or low tech sensors that we can put in the, let's say, in the chimneys of the cook stoves and measure a very specific kind of gas. So, for example, we could know if we found, I don't know the name of the gas in English, but furanos, it's in Spanish. If we find that kind of emissions, then we know that it's not working efficiently, and then we can prove, let's say, the other side of the coin. We prove that it's not working, and therefore the carbon credit couldn't be issued. So it's just a matter of finding the right solution, as I was telling you. It's not to propose the same for everyone, just to find that specific sensor that should be easy to find, because measuring those kind of gases, it's mostly easy, and we can find a low budget version of that and then link it to a smartphone and then upload the information to the cloud and do the computing, either on the cloud or in the cell phone itself.
Thank you. Very interesting.
I think there's no more questions. I think not. So thank you again for hearing this crazy person talking about something that is relatively new. Happy to answer any questions offline. And if you need the presentation, happy to share it. Also, once we finalize the document, it will be made available to everyone. So thank you again for being here, and thank you again, Maria Paula.
Thank you, Carlos.
Thank you.